Weather and life both change quickly. Do you have a farm estate plan? You need to learn the best option to help your family avoid or minimize federal estate taxes and other costs.
I'm Brad Swenson, President of Swenson Investments and Commodities. We work confidentially with farmers, ranchers, and advisors to help develop the best farm estate plan.
Our Farm Basics topic today is water quality. We get lots of questions about how safe is the water around the country? Should I be drinking it? Should I be worried about pollutants getting into the water?
You know what, Brian? We're on top of a hill here on one of our fields. Actually, this is a farm that my great-grandfather lived on and farmed. And you think about it, you know, this has been in the family for several generations, yet we've made some changes this year, or well, just in the last few years. We've installed some drainage tile here, we've done some work around the waterways. Now we've got water coming out of drain tile right into our grass waterway strip and heading on to the neighbor. Does that neighbor need to be worried about that water quality, or what are we doing?
Well, it's not just that, but let's also think about the fact that there's a well on this farm. There's a well on my farm that's just a mile down the road. We're drinking that well water every day, and for us as farmers, the last thing we want is water pollution. So this water quality issue is not just a thing that people in town are going to think about. We think about it a lot more out here in the country because we're drinking well water. It's had no treatment, nothing. We're just pulling water out of deep down in the soil and we're drinking it. Right? Well, seriously, I mean, we don't buy bottled water or anything out on the farm. We're drinking tap water every day.
Well, we are. And you think about where that water is and how did that water get there? And all the water that rains on top of our farm, on top of the soil, has to work its way down through the soil. So fertilizer, any crop protection products that we're using, whether it's weed killers or bug killers, all that is filtering on down through the soil.
It's all stuff to think about. So here's where I always like to start with people when it comes to water quality. Guess what? There's absolutely no water in the world that is 100% free of any contaminants. Okay, there's always going to be other stuff in the water, whether it's calcium, magnesium, sulfur. I mean, there could be a whole bunch of different things in there, but that's why the government, our federal government, has drinking water standards, and what those are is basically certain levels that if you don't exceed those levels, they've deemed this water as safe to humans. So one of the items that gets talked about the most in agriculture is nitrates, and the drinking water standard for nitrate is 10 parts per million. So if you have water that's less than 10 parts per million, that's safe. And also, just so you know, the reason why the drinking water standard is as low as 10 parts per million, that's for babies, okay? If it's adults, it could be many times higher than that, and it probably would never hurt most adult human beings.
Oh, but it's scary just to think there could be nitrates in my water. In fact, a few years ago, Brian and I were traveling. We were over in Israel, and Brian got a bottle of water. And you know, you're in a different country, you aren't sure if you want to drink it out of the tap or not. Brian got a bottle. And I happened to look at that bottle and at the label, and I saw, wait a minute, the chemical symbol for nitrate is on there as one of the ingredients in this water. And I said, Brian, you probably don't want to drink that water. But when we looked at it, and I couldn't read the Hebrew on the label, but what we found out was that it was a little over 8 parts per million of nitrate in the water. So it was safer than our drinking standards of 10 parts per million. So it was okay to drink, and Brian consumed that water happily.
But the thing was, in Israel, they had all the things that were in that water right on the label. So there were all these different elements that were in there, and you don't see that on bottled water in the United States. So at first, it's scary. And at first, when you realize, hey, there's nitrate in your water you're drinking, you say, oh my goodness, that's got to be horrible. No, it's not. There's going to be some degree of different nutrients that are in that water. That's not a bad thing, okay? So with everything, with all things, they say the dose makes the poison. And if you have low doses of a lot of these things, it's probably good for you, not bad for you. So don't get all concerned about it. Now, the flip side of that is we want to make sure that as farmers, we're doing a good job so we don't have drinking water that has problems with it. So let's talk about the steps that we're taking on our farm and other farmers are taking to make sure that the water you drink is safe.
Okay, well, first of all, let's talk about that nitrogen issue, because nitrogen in the nitrate form actually is leachable. It can move down through our soils. So as farmers, one of the things we're concerned about is we don't want to put on too much nitrogen on our crop at the wrong time and have it leach away. Let's be honest, as farmers, the biggest reason is that nitrogen is very expensive. If we're raising a grass crop like corn or wheat, we're putting a lot of nitrogen on. So what we do is we do soil testing to see how much our ground can safely hold and when we can put it out there, and then we'll follow up with plant tissue testing to make sure that we aren't putting too much nitrogen on our crop, because it's a waste of money for us and it's bad for the environment.
That's right. So when you look at overall fertilizer usage in the United States, it really hasn't gone up that much in the last 20 years, and yields have doubled in the last 20 years. So we're raising a lot more crop on the same amount of fertility that we were using for the most part 20 years ago. We're doing a better job as farmers, and also we have a lot of products now to help keep certain nutrients so they don't leach down, so we don't lose them. Also, like Darren said, in our self-interest, we don't want to lose the things because they're expensive, okay? But we also don't want to lose them because it's going to pollute somebody's water. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is soil is the best filter that there is. That's one of the reasons why it's naturally here. So when we apply a lot of these herbicides and stuff, they attach to soil and the water can filter through and the herbicides stay attached to the soil until they get used up by a plant. So there's very little chance that we're going to end up with a bunch of pesticides way down deep in groundwater. That's not a real big concern. Nitrate, something that can leach, that is a little bit more of a concern. But again, we're doing what we can to try to manage this. Now, I got really kind of worked up here a couple months ago when I was talking to somebody and they were just telling me how much farmers are polluting the water. And I just said, you know, there was a city nearby me last year that dumped billions, in fact, probably trillions of gallons of raw sewage into the river. Okay, the municipalities around the country are doing far more polluting to our rivers than farmers ever will. So don't get all worried about what the farmers are doing. And also, for all the hundreds and hundreds of trillions of gallons of water out there, and there's some little bit of nitrate or cow manure that ends up in the water, it just doesn't amount to much. And for the most part, we've got very safe water here in the United States. In fact, the safest and most abundant water supply of any country in the world.
And you're going to need to use some of that water to spray our weed of the week. This one is a really bad weed, but can you identify it?